Good evening, and thank you everybody for coming out tonight. We really appreciate seeing such a full house, so many people here supporting music at Terra High School. We're excited to be here for the first real time in the new theater. For the first time we're playing a concert, just to have a concert, not to test the HVAC system. I have to admit that I really liked the HVAC concert because it was great material for jokes. So you'll be glad to know that this year there will be far fewer jokes. Up on stage here we have the Terra High School Jazz Ensemble. That was In the Mood, and it featured Dylan Carr on tenor saxophone, Matt Smith on alto saxophone, and Aurora Kane on trumpets. We've sort of gone back to the roots of jazz this year. We're playing a lot of big band stuff from the early part of the 20th century. We're going to continue right along with Take the A Train. So a little bit about this jazz band here. It is an all-volunteer group that meets twice a week after school. So these students come in every Tuesday and Thursday for a couple of hours, not because they get extra credit or because it's for a grade or whatever, just because they want to and they enjoy being here, and I think that's pretty incredible. Though, because it's an after-school group, we only start jazz band after marching season is over, because marching season is that wonderful thing that sucks our lives away. But with that, with our concert being now and marching season ending the beginning of November, that only left us 8 rehearsals. So what you're hearing tonight is these group of people that came together and put in a lot of work. I think they've really brought together some incredible music for this evening after only 8 rehearsals. Our next piece is another big bang song, again from the middle part of the 20th century this time. It has a little bit of holiday spirits called The Man with the Bag. And I'd like to welcome to the stage our very own Colleen Coperly on vocals. Once again, Colleen Coperly. Not for lack of talent, but for lack of my memory, I forgot to acknowledge on our last tune, Take the A Train, it featured Pepin on trumpet. We have one more piece that we're going to play for you tonight, and it is the band's favorite piece, I think. When we get to the end of rehearsals, they often will just start playing this song. And what's funny about it is I will often end our rehearsals with this song anyway. So we'll play it once, and then I'll say, okay, you can pack up and go home. And they say, no, let's play it again. And then they play it again. And so I hope you have every bit as much fun as they're going to have playing this. This is called Critical Mass. We'll be back in just a few minutes. We're going to start with something a little different this year than we've done in years past. A parent actually suggested this last year. She came and saw us at a marching band rehearsal, and we were just skating in rehearsal arts, playing through our music. And it really is a different experience than you get from coming and watching a show. The show has all the visual aspects. It has the color guard and the drill and everything that we do there. But all of that being outside, spread across 100 yards, it really takes away from the music at least a little bit. And so we thought we'd give you a chance here to hear our music in nice little rehearsal arts where we're seated, where we can actually play musically and not just really loudly. So this year's show, it was a huge success. I think it was a really fun show. It got us 11 trophies, 5 of which were first place. And more than that, I think our audiences really enjoyed it, and I think the students really enjoyed performing it. It's a show that I think everybody, audiences, other schools, our students will remember for a really long time, and I think that's something quite special. And I think most of all, it made all of last year's seniors really jealous and bitter. I see some of you out there. So we're gonna play 3 sessions from the field show. It was called The Fall of Troy. The first section we're gonna play is from Spartacus. And this part of our show sort of depicted the Trojans leaving Sparta back for Troy with Helen. They stole Helen. The next one we're going to play is called Agnus Dei. This one, we had a sword fight in it, and it sort of represented the death of our hero, Paris of Troy. And then the last one we're going to play is from Vesuvius, and this depicted the Greeks with the Trojan horse getting inside the walls and burning everything and killing everyone. So, enjoy one. of our drummers just failed band. So to put things in perspective for where we're at tonight, all that field show music, we started handing that out last May. We finished handing out that music in June and July. We had our first required practice back in July. Our show had 12 and a half minutes worth of music. So we played that music, practiced that music, along with drill and all the visual aspects, but from really beginning, or middle of July, all the way through the beginning of November, 12 and a half minutes worth of music. So that gave us about 5.5 weeks to prepare for tonight's concert, where we have about a half hour worth of music for you. The December concert always, it's a fun one, but it's always a little stressful for me. We get to our last competition and I think, oh man, 5.5 weeks and we have to have a full concert ready. But these guys have done an amazing job. We're going to open the concert band portion of tonight's evening with a piece called Toccata for Band. It was written in 1957, and since then pretty immediately became part of the standard wind band repertoire. It's played by colleges and high schools throughout the country. So enjoy Toccata for Band. This next piece is a piece I first heard in Chicago. I go there every year the week before holiday break for a conference there, and it's a wonderful conference. I see all kinds of bands, and I heard this piece there performed maybe 5 or 6 years ago by a high school band from Texas, and it is, I think, a really fun piece. It's called The Acrobats. It's a pretty traditional circus march. I think it's just filled with all kinds of excitement and joy and happiness and all those things that are like the circus. So this next piece is by a composer, one of my favorite composers, John Mackey. He's a young guy. He's a relatively new composer, but he writes a lot of really good music, a lot of really good quality music. Oftentimes for bands at the high school level or early college level, you get people that are just out there to make a buck, and they have a formula and they just write the same music over and over and over again and call it something different. And John Mackey's different. He writes music because he enjoys it. He writes music that's really good. However, he usually writes music that's crazy. And we've played several of his works. We played Foundry last year, was for band, and then percussion was all found instruments. And we played Xerxes a couple years ago. He has one called Asphalt Cocktail. And they're all just crazy, nuts, fast, and angry, and all these different weird meters. And one time, actually, at the Chicago conference that I go to, he was apparently sitting at a bar with some college band directors, and they're all making fun of him because he writes a lot of the music that's just crazy like he is. And so he went home and said, fine, all right, one that's not crazy, it'll be pretty and slow, and you'll like it. And so he did, and he showed up the next year and he said, here you go, there's my pretty piece, and I'll never write another one. And they premiered it actually last year at Chicago by one of the college bands that was there, and it's just beautiful. It's called Hymn to a Blue Hour, and it's about that hour of day between when the sun goes down and before it actually gets dark. And there's all kinds of poetry and music out there about that, and this is his take on that. So Hymn to a Blue Hour. each year at our December concert, I like to do at least one holiday tune. And the holiday of the year this year is Hanukkah. This next tune is called Rhapsody for Hanukkah. It's aside from being a holiday tune, it's just a really good quality of music. It's really well written, and I think has a lot of interest in it. It's a medley of many traditional Hanukkah songs, although I'm told by some of the students the only one they recognize is the dreidel song. So hopefully you'll recognize a few others. Please enjoy Rhapsody for Hanukkah. tonight is a short piece. It's just full of excitement and fun. It's written by Dmitri Shostakovich. He's a Russian composer from the Soviet age, a real interesting guy. This is from a musical comedy that he wrote in 1958. And he apparently hated it. It's in your program notes, but he wrote a friend of his about this musical comedy and was like, it's terrible, it's uninteresting, it's vulgar, I hate it, don't watch it. And so that's what we're gonna play for you.